Welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for coming together to join in this rich body of wisdom we call Torah. We are going to be reading this week's Torah portion, which is Parshat Terumah, which is in the book of Exodus, chapter 25, beginning with verse 1. We'll read through the English translation of our entire portion, and then I will share with you a focus study about it. Then we will have our collaborative conversation about it. If you'd like to unmute at this time together, we have the opportunity to recite a blessing, giving thanks for the opportunity of this moment. Baruch atah Adonai
Adonai,
Eloheinu
Eloheinu
melech
melech
haolam,
haolam,
asher
asher
kiddushanu
kidshanu
b'mitzvotav
b'mitzvotav,
b'tzivanu
v'tzivanu
la'asok
la'asok
b'divrei
b'divrei
Torah.
Torah. Amen.
Thank you, God, for the opportunity to immerse ourselves in words, deeds, and relationships of Torah.
Amen.
I'll share with you the opening verses of our weekly portion, then I'll give others an opportunity to read as well. Once again, we're in the book of Exodus, chapter 25, beginning with verse 1. Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, "Tell the Israelite people to bring me gifts. You shall accept gifts for me from every person whose heart so moves them. And these are the gifts that you shall accept from them: gold, silver, and copper, blue, purple, and crimson yarns, fine linen, goat's hair, tan ram skins, dolphin skins, and acacia wood, oil for lighting, spices for the anointing oil and for the aromatic incense, lapis lazuli and other stones for setting, for the ephod and for the breastpiece. And let them make me a sanctuary, that I may dwell among them, exactly as I show you, the pattern of the tabernacle and the pattern of all its furnishings, so shall you make it." And Margot, would you like to read a little bit, beginning with verse 10?
Wait. Oh, okay, here I am. Okay. They shall make an ark of acacia wood, 2.5 cubits long, and a cubit and a half wide, and a cubit and a half high. Overlay it with pure gold. Overlay it inside and out, and make upon it a gold molding around about. Cast 4 gold rings for it to be attached to the 4 feet, 2 rings on one side walls, and 2 rings and 2 on the other. Make poles of acacia wood and overlay them with gold. Then insert the poles into the rings on the side walls of the ark for carrying the ark. The poles shall remain in the rings of the ark. They shall not be removed from it. And deposit in the ark the tablet of the pact, which I will give you.
Thank you, Margot. Let me invite Mark Levinstein. Would you like to continue there at verse 17?
Thank you, Rabbi. You shall make a cover of pure gold, 2.5 cubits long and a cubit and a half wide. Make 2 cherubim of gold. Make them of hammered work at the 2 ends of the cover. Make one cherub at one end and the other cherub at the other end. Of one piece with the cover, so you'll make the cherubim at its 2 ends. The cherubim shall have their wings spread out above shielding the cover with their wings. They shall confront each other, the faces of the cherubim being turned toward the cover. Place the cover on top of the ark, after depositing inside the ark the pact which I will give you. There I will meet with you, and I will impart to you from above the cover, from between the 2 cherubim that are on the top of the ark of the pact, all that I will command you concerning the Israelite people.
Thank you, Mark. Let me invite Jim. Would you like to continue there, verse 23?
Thank you, Rabbi. You shall make a table of acacia wood, 2 cubits long, 1 cubit wide, and a cubit and a half high. Overlay it with pure gold and make a gold molding around it. Make a rim of a hand's breadth around it and make a gold molding for its rim round about. Make 4 gold rings for it and attach the rings to the 4 corners its 4 legs. The rings shall be next to the rim as holders for poles to carry the table. Make the poles of acacia wood and overlay them with gold. By these the table shall be carried. Make its bowls, ladles, jars, and jugs with which to offer libations. Make them of pure gold, and on the table you shall set the bread of display to be before me always.
Thank you. Norm, would you like to continue that verse 31?
You shall make a lampstand of pure gold. The lampstand shall be made of hammered wood. Its base and its shaft, its cups, calices, and petals shall be of one piece. 6 branches shall issue from its sides, 3 branches from one side of the lampstand, and 3 branches from the other side of the lampstand. On one branch there shall be 3 cups shaped like almond blossoms, each with calyx and petals, and on the next branch there shall be 3 cups shaped like almond blossoms, each with calyx and petals. So for all 6 branches issuing from the lampstand. And on the lampstand itself there shall be 4 cups shaped like almond blossoms, each with calyx and petals. A calyx of one piece with it under a pair of branches, and a calyx of one piece with it under the second pair of branches, and a calyx of one piece with it under the last pair of branches. So for all 6 branches issuing from the lampstand. Their calyces and their stems shall be of one piece with it, the whole of it a single hammered piece of pure gold. Make it 7 lamps. The lamps shall be so mounted as to give the light on its front side, and its tongs and fire pans of pure gold. It shall be made from all these furnishings out of a talent of pure gold. Note well and follow the patterns for them that are being shown to you on the mountain.
Thank you, Norm. And Mark Thompson, would you like to continue at the very start of chapter 26?
I would, thank you. You must make the first cover of the tabernacle out of 10 tapestries, woven out of twined linen, turquoise wool, purple wool, and scarlet wool. You must make them with a woven design of cherubim. The length of each tapestry must be 28 cubits, and the width of each tapestry must be 4 cubits, all the tapestries being of the same size. 5 tapestries must be attached to one another, and the other 5 must likewise be attached to one another. You must make loops of turquoise wool along the edge of the tapestry at the end of the first set, and you must do the same along the edge of the endmost tapestry of the second set. You must make 50 loops on one tapestry, and you must make another 50 loops along the edge of the tapestry of the second set, each loop being exactly aligned with its counterpart. You must make 50 golden clasps, and you must join the 2 sets of tapestries to each other with the clasps, so that the cover of the tabernacle will become one.
Thank you so much. And here around the table here, Sherry, would you like to read a little bit starting with verse 7?
Thank you, Rabbi. You shall then make cloths of goat's hair for a tent over the tabernacle. Make the cloths 11 in number. The length of each cloth shall be 30 cubits, and the width of each cloth shall be 4 cubits. The 11 cloths to have the same measurements. Join 5 of the cloths by themselves, and the other 6 cloths by themselves, and fold over the 6th cloth at the front of the tent. Make 50 loops on the edge of the outermost cloth of the one set, and 50 loops on the edge of the cloth of the other set. Make 50 copper clasps and fit the clasp into the loops and couple the tent together so that it becomes one whole. As for the overlapping excess of the cloths of the tent, the extra half cloth shall overlap the back of the tabernacle, while the extra cubit at either end of the length of tent cloth shall hang down on the bottom of the two sides of the tabernacle and cover it. And make for the tent a covering of tanned ram skins and a covering of dolphin skins above. You shall make the planks for the tabernacle of acacia wood upright. The length of each
I'm
plank.
worried about them.
I am too.
Should be all right. Thank you.
You want to go check on her still?
Sure.
The length of each plank shall be 10 cubits, and the width of each plank a cubit and a half. Each plank shall have two tenons parallel to each other. Do the same with all the planks of the tabernacle. Of the planks of the tabernacle, make 20 planks on the south side, making 40 silver sockets under the 20 planks, 2 sockets under the one plank for its two tenons, and 2 sockets under each following plank for its 2 tenons. And for the other side wall of the tabernacle on the north side, 20 planks with their 40 silver sockets, 2 sockets under one plank and 2 sockets under each of the following plank. What did you pick up from 22, Steve? Here we go.
And for the near of the tabernacle to the west, make 6 planks, and make 2 planks for the corners of the tabernacle. They shall match at the bottom and terminate alike at the top inside the ring. Thus shall it be with both of them. They shall form the 2 corners. Thus shall be 8 planks with their sockets of silver, 16 sockets, 2 sockets under the first plank, and 2 sockets under each of the other plank. It bothers me. It seems like they're worshiping.
Yeah. Okay.
uh,
Thank you.
materials.
We'll talk about that. That's good. Richard, would you like to continue at verse 26?
Oh, yes, Trouble, thank you. You shall make bars of acacia wood, 5 of the planks of the one side wall and of the tabernacle, 5 bars for the planks of the other side wall of the tabernacle, and 5 bars for the planks of the wall of the tabernacle in the rear of the west, to the west. The center bar, halfway up the planks, shall run from end to end. Overlay the planks with gold and make the rings of gold as holders for the bars, and overlay the bars with gold. Then set up the tabernacle according to the manner of it that you were shown on the mountain. You shall make a curtain of blue, purple, and crimson yarns and fine twisted linen. It shall have a design of a cherubim worked into it. Hang it upon 4 posts of acacia wood, overlaid with gold, and having hooks of gold, set in 4 sockets of silver. Hang the overlaid with gold and having hooks of gold set in 4 sockets of silver. Hang the curtain under the clasps and carry the ark of the pact there behind the curtain, so that the curtain shall serve you as the partition between the holy and the holy of holies. Place the cover upon the ark of the pact in the holy of holies. Place the table outside the curtain and the lampstand by the south wall of the tabernacle opposite the table, which is to be placed by the north wall. You shall make a screen for the entrance of the tent, of blue, purple, and crimson yarns, and fine twisted linen, done in embroidery. Make 5 posts of acacia wood for the screen and overlay them with gold. their hooks being of gold, and cast for them 5 sockets of copper.
Thank you so much. Let me invite Justin. Linda, would you care to read at the very start of chapter 27?
Thank you, Rabbi. Would you go ahead to start?
And you shall make the altar of acacia wood, 5 cubits long and 5 cubits wide. The altar shall be square, and its height shall be 3 cubits. And you shall make its horns on its 4 corners. Its horns shall be from it, and you shall overlay it with copper. And you shall make its pots to remove its ashes, and its shovels, and its sprinkling basins, and its flesh hooks, and its scoops. You shall make all its implements of copper. And you shall make for it a copper grating of netting work. And you shall make on the netting 4 copper rings on its 4 ends. And you shall place it beneath the ledge of the altar from below, and the net shall extend downward until the middle of the altar. And you shall make poles for the altar, poles of acacia wood, and you shall overlay them with copper. And its poles shall be inserted into the rings, and the poles shall be on both sides of the altar when it is carried.
You shall make it hollow out of boards, as he showed you on the mountain. So shall they do. And you shall make the courtyard of the Mishkan on the southern side. There shall be hangings for the courtyard of twisted fine linen, 100 cubits long on one side. And its pillars shall be 20, and their sockets 20 of copper. The hooks of the pillars and their bands shall be of silver. And so for the northern end, in the length hangings, 100 cubits long, its pillars 20, and their sockets 20 of copper. The hooks of the pillars and their bands of silver. The width of the courtyard on the western side, hangings 50 cubits, their pillars 10, and their sockets 10. The width of the courtyard on the eastern side, 50 cubits. The hangings on the shoulder shall be 15 cubits, their pillars 3, and their sockets 3. And on the second shoulder there shall be 15 hangings, their pillars 3, and their sockets 3. And at the gate of the courtyard shall be a screen of 20 cubits, made of blue, purple, and crimson wool, and twisted fine linen, the work of an embroiderer, their pillars 4 and their sockets 4. All the pillars around the courtyard shall have silver bands, silver hooks, and copper sockets. The length of the courtyard shall be 100 cubits, and the width 50 by 50 cubits. The height of the hanging shall be 5 cubits of twisted fine linen, and their sockets shall be of copper. All the implements of the Mishkan, for all its labor, and all its pegs, and all the pegs of the courtyard shall be copper.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for bringing out into our public domain these words from Torah. I'd like to share with you a focused study about it, and then we'll have our collective collaborative conversation about it. And on the surface of the text, what we've just, everyone has been sharing with us is this reading that describes a series of donations that are to be made by the Israelites or that the Israelites are invited to make in order to construct a Mishkan, a place where dwells the divine presence. And then we read a description of exactly how the Mishkan itself is to be built, its dimensions, and its materials. So for me, as I looked at this week's Torah portion, I went back, as I often do, to the very beginning of it to look at the word that gives us the title for this week's portion, Terumah. So on our study sheet, which I invite you to take out, on number 1, I have our very first verse. God spoke to Moses, saying, "Tell the Israelites people to bring me Terumah." And that, of course, Terumah is the name for this week's portion. So in my edition, that gets translated into English. Terumah gets translated as gifts. Now, there are many different words that could have been used for the word gift. The most direct is the word matana, which means gift, and that comes from the Hebrew verb natan, which means to give. So a gift is something that is given. So the question is, what's the significance of this rather specific and unique word, truma, when it's being used to describe what is to be given in order to construct this dwelling place of the divine, this word truma? So the etymological origin of the word truma comes from the Hebrew verb rum, which means to be exalted, or in other of its forms of conjugation, to exalt. And those who attend a Shabbat morning service in particular may have heard a song that includes a word that's based upon rum from Psalm 99. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu, ve'yishtachavu l'char kodsho. Exalt Adonai our God and bow towards his holy hill. So that's a song from Psalms that's often sung when the Torah scroll is taken out from the scroll. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'yishtachavu l'char kodsho. So this is that sense of elevation and exaltation. So the question is, in the context of truma, this word that comes from that word, that verb rum, what exactly is being lifted up? Are we merely lifting up an object that's outside of ourselves, or is something else happening here? So that's what we're going to explore a little bit. So here is another understanding of this word truma, and this comes from Rabbi Chaim Ephraim, who was the grandson of the founder of Hasidic Judaism, the Baal Shem Tov. And he notes the word truma is comprised of the word Torah. So what he has done is he's taken the Hebrew word truma, and he's kind of rearranged some of those existing letters, and he's created out of that word truma the word Torah. And then what's left over after you've created the word Torah is a single letter, the letter mem. So here he says, the word Terumah is comprised of the word Torah and the letter mem, which has the numerical value of 40. So every Hebrew letter has a numerical value, and the numerical value of the letter mem is the word 40. So what Rabbi Chaim Ephraim is sharing with us is something like Terumah really means the Torah of 40. So what does all that mean? So there's a lot of rich rabbinic literature that ties the number 40 to some significant events, both what we would call historical and natural. So here, in ancient rabbinic thought, a human being achieved its form in the womb over a period of 40 days. 40 is the time it takes for something to go from beginning to fruition. The rabbis taught that 40 are the days between planting and harvest, and 40 are the weeks between conception and birth. And of course, we also have 40 days and 40 nights for the flood of that Noah experienced. We have the 40 years that it took for the Israelites to go from Egypt to the Promised Land. And now, most recently, from what we've read, the 40 days that Moses was up on Mount Sinai. So this number 40 in this tradition is associated with new birth, the end of something, the beginning of something, something indicating gestation, something indicating birth, something indicating new beginning. So this 40 days of the birth of Torah is also both the number of the period of time that plants grow according to this rabbinic tradition. It's also the number of days and weeks within which there's conception of an embryo within a human being, and for that embryo to go from until its birth. So all of this is tied together. This Terumah is now indicating, under this Hasidic understanding, that it's not merely identifying an object that's being raised, this gold, this silver, these skins, these gems and stones and so forth. It's also indicating something that ties all of us together: nature, humanity, Torah, all sharing this same period of time in order to come into fruition and existence. We're going to pursue this a little bit further. So what is this Mishkan that's being built? Well, when Anna and I were in Israel for a year, we went on this lovely tour with a group to Timna Park down in the south. And when we're in Timna Park, our guide pointed out, oh, look, there's the Mishkan. So, and what he was pointing at was some wonderful church group had gone through all this detailed labor and calculation to build according to, as they understood it, the materials and the dimensions. They built what the Mishkan, as they understood what this text that we just read was indicating. So one way of understanding what we're reading is that there's an actual physical, it's referring to an actual physical building that's being built. And within one line of commentary within the Jewish tradition, that building is supposed to be a reflection of the cosmos itself. So that there is something from beyond us, which human beings are now constructing on this plane, in this dimension, to reflect the entire universe. There's also a Hasidic understanding of what this Mishkan project is all about. And in that tradition, the Mishkan is a reflection of the divine presence within each of us. So that the Mishkan, if you will, is that of our inner self, which we discover and know through self-examination and introspection. So what is this Terumah? What is this? If that's what's being built within that understanding, what is it that what are the donations that we are to bring in order to create this kind of reflection of the divine presence within us? So for that, I share with you this reading from an article by Eitan Fishbane, whom I was fortunate to study with for a year. I studied the Zohar with him. He is a professor of Jewish thought at Jewish Theological Seminary. And he wrote this. He's referring to a term that we discover in Talmud called Mesirut Nefesh, which literally means the handing over of one's soul. And he writes, when we are at our best, we give not in order to receive. we give in the way that the Hasidic masters speak of the ultimate service to God, the act of Misirut Nefesh, literally the handing over one's soul. The act of Misirut Nefesh is a process of transcending the prison of our own egotism and self-centeredness. In the moment of devotion, we seek to break open the self-protective walls of our hearts, to make ourselves truly vulnerable to the indwelling of the divine presence. We come to stand in the radiant and transformative presence of God, the divinity that dwells within, not only beyond the human. And kind of reflecting this sense as well is this reading from Rabbi Yonah Sklar, who is an ultra-Orthodox rabbi, who writes, when we redefine Mesirut Nefesh as pushing oneself beyond one's own myopic expectation and surpassing the limits of what one thought oneself capable of, on the human level, the person is becoming extraordinary. Mesirut Nefesh opens miracles for us, and he quotes from the Talmud. In the merit of Mesirut Nefesh, a person experiences miracles. True Mesirut Nefesh is not self-reduction, it is expansion. So on the physical plane, we might imagine that what is happening in this text that we've just read is that people are taking these physical objects that they had, stones, oils, wood, gold, silver, and they are giving them up in order to build this physical structure called the Mishkan. What we have been exploring in our reading especially ever since we began the book of Exodus, is to what extent we want to look at this text as merely describing events that took place on a historical plane. A group of people physically leaving a geographic area called Egypt, traveling across a domain called the wilderness to arrive at another geographical place called the land of Canaan, which is described as the promised land. And that's one way of reading it. Another way of reading this is to see it as more of an archetypal story that's describing something that's always happening and that we ourselves can be participants in this kind of journeys, this kind of archetypal journey. And then a third way of reading it, perhaps, is that this is actually describing something that's happening within each one of us. This kind of journey that is constantly happening within each one of us. So the Hasidic approach, if you will, which is always exploring one's interior life and the capacity to transform one's interior life in order to make the divine more present in the world, is kind of the theme that I'm kind of emphasizing in my reading anyway. So this notion about this connection that we described, that the number 40 in this rabbinic tradition shares with us, this connection between Torah, between things that are growing in the ground, between human beings coming to gestation and birth. This is, in a sense, is touched upon in another tradition, that of Zen Buddhism, and here is from Thich Nhat Hanh's book about mindfulness, where he describes the term interbeing. And he writes, if you are a poet, you will see clearly that there is a cloud floating in this sheet of paper. Without a cloud, there will be no rain. Without rain, trees cannot grow. And without trees, we cannot make paper. And so Thich Nhat Hanh is, in a sense, what he's saying is each thing doesn't exist separately from each other thing. He uses the term we inter-are. We exist in relationship and with one another. So I'd like to, at this point, share with you the painting that I've chosen for this session to explore this notion about interbeing and perhaps what Terumah may all be about. So this is a painting by Mark Rothko. Mark Rothko was born 1903 in Latvia. Then his parents flee Latvia in 1913. So at that time, Mark Rothko is about 9, 10 years old, and they settle here in Portland, Oregon, actually. And Mark Rothko grows up here. He goes to school here. He attends the Jewish neighborhood house here. And then in 1923, when he's about 20 years old, he goes to the East Coast. He goes to New York City. What's interesting about Mark Rothko's upbringing is that when he was still living in Latvia, his father, who had started out kind of anti-religious, later in his life became quite Orthodox, is experiencing a lot of the trauma and the persecution. And of all of his children, the youngest was Mark Rothko, and he sent Mark to Cheder at the age of 5. So he was going to a Jewish religious school and studying Talmud from the age of 5 on. So he has that, he brings that with him when he comes to the United States, that upbringing. So Mark Rothko, when he becomes one of these modern artists who, like many modern artists in the early 20th century, fascinated by what surrealism exploring and other modern art is exploring, which is the role of the subconscious and archetypes. And he, in his early paintings, they're filled with kind of ectomorphic forms, which is kind of representing archetypal forms and exploring what's going on with the subconscious and our emotions. And then in 1949, Mark Rothko has what really could be characterized as a spiritual experience. Every day, for months on end, Mark Rothko, when he was in New York City, went to the Museum of Modern Art. And he stood in front of a single painting. And that was a painting by Matisse called The Red Room. If you're not familiar with it, I invite you to look it up online. It is a vibrant image of a room with desks and chairs and so forth, but there is this brilliant, brilliant red that just pervades everything. And Mark Rothko would stand in front of it, and then he would later write about it. When you look at it, you become that color. You become totally saturated with it. From that point on, he then no longer is painting any kind of forms, if you will, these ectomorphic forms that he had in his earlier work. And he explores this notion of saturation, the effect not of forms on a painting that might have on a viewer, but that of color. And he also shifts significantly in the size of his works. So the work that I have on the front, for example, is it's about 7 feet tall and about 6 feet wide. That's the scale of it. And those are the kind of paintings that he was doing. And in the 50s, he was trying to create the sense that he got from Matisse's painting of having a total experience, the sense of saturation of based upon what was before you. And in the 50s, he did that with very bright and bold and colorful paintings. And as he began to hear feedback from how people responded to his paintings, which they found full of joy and wonder and uplift, and he decided that that was not really getting at what he wanted to get at, which was something even deeper than those kind of emotions. He wanted people to really get lost in the work. And so he created, in the 1960s, a whole series of works of a much darker palette. And the darker palette was used to create a more meditative, if you will, experience. So he wanted to create with all those works a kind of total experience. And it was not just a site of an experience itself, but it was to be an experience. And when I recognized this element within Rothko's work, that he wasn't there merely to present to us what he had experienced, but he was trying to create a place where we could experience something. I thought of the different ways we can understand Torah as well. Whether Torah is presenting to us something that has happened on this canvas that we call this written page, or whether it is presenting to us an opportunity, a canvas that allows us to enter into it and have our own experiences. So here, what Rothko is doing, he's combining the sense of saturation with this sense of creating a site of experience itself. So something that we enter into and something that's also within us. So if you look at the painting itself, this is called number 22. When he started doing these works, he no longer had word for titles because he didn't want to influence how people responded. He didn't want to precondition or predispose people to what they were going to see. He just wanted to create this opportunity that would allow the viewer to enter into it and to have their own experience. So this number 22, we have this burgundy block on the bottom, and then we have this black block on the top. So I look at that, and what I'm encountering there, my own experience of it, is that there is this meeting of above and below, of this dark representing, if you will, the infinite, uh, encountering this burgundy, which represents perhaps soil, maybe the sense of finiteness. So finite meeting the infinite, the timeful meeting the timeless, and perhaps this is Rothko's way of experiencing what we would call exaltation, the sense of the self kind of giving itself over and encountering that which is infinite. And so here we have this brief band, if you will, where the two are what? Kissing, touching, encountering, making contact with, if only briefly. And when I thought about this moment of dealing with how do we, as time full people, how do we encounter that which is timeless? How can we experience it? And there's this poem that T.S. Eliot wrote called Burnt Norton. And that's exactly what he's dealing with in this poem, of which this is a small piece. And it's based upon an experience he had walking through a garden in the Cotswolds in England. And from that experience, which was for him a spiritual experience, as looking at Matisse's painting was for Rothko, something that inspires a transcendent moment, which takes the encounterer outside of him or herself and allows that person to touch something which is eternal. Okay, so here is what T.S. Eliot writes. At the still point of the turning world, neither flesh nor fleshless, neither from nor towards, at the still point, there the dance is, but neither arrest nor movement, and do not call it fixity, where past and future are gathered, neither movement from nor towards, neither ascent nor decline, except for the point, the still point. There be no dance, and there is only the dance. So this rich first line, there's a still point and a turning world, and they are one and the same. They are somehow encountering one another and are able to coexist. And at that point of coexistence, he describes the dance, and that's all there is, he says. And he uses this phrase, which I've used for the name of this week's Torah study, neither flesh nor fleshless. That is, there is both the substantial and the insubstantial. There is the finite and the infinite. And they are all there at that still point of the turning world. So this is what I was experiencing when I was reading Terumah, that in addition to whatever there may be that we encounter in this very material expression of gold and silver and skins and stones and a structure that's being built by these human beings on this physical trek that they're going on, that it's also at another level describing something that's happening within each of us, and that what's happening within each of us is also something that, according to T.S. Eliot and Mark Rothko, is happening in the cosmos as well. This encounter between that which is finite and that which is infinite, that which is still and that which is moving, that which is timeful and that which is timeless. So part of this journey that is being described in Exodus involves, I think, a reminder that if we're going to reach this place of promise, which holds out this promise of fulfillment and peace and no more wandering and no more sense of dissettlement and no more sense of coveting, which is the final phrase from what's called the Ten Commandments, the no more sense of missing something, no more sense of that something is absent from me. That part of that has to do with this notion of truma, and which is so beautifully described by Eitan Fishbane and Rabbi Sklar as this sense of going beyond our own narrow sense of what's possible and experiencing greatness and overcoming our egotism so that we can make contact with the divine, not just that which is outside of us, but perhaps even more importantly, contact and manifest in the world the divine that's within us. So with that, I'd love to know what you experience, your thoughts, your feelings about what we've read, what have we seen. Mark Thompson, please, and then I'll call others that have raised their hands as well.
First of all, I really got lost in the painting. I just came back from my monthly eye injection and looking at the painting, I'm wondering, am I imagining seeing flecks of black in the burgundy and flecks of red in the black? And it was all kind of modeled and wonderful. And then the center strip there was an altogether different experience. And I'm not sure what that meant to me. But what I did reflect on was last week I had an opportunity to be a docent at the observatory in Rancho Mirage, and we have several telescopes set up to view the heavens. And I was assigned one particular object in the sky that was called the shoe buckle cluster. I'd never seen it before, and I was told that I should tell the people a little bit about the history that the light from this cluster comes from about 3,500 light years, which in itself is impossible to conceive. And the other thing is that the person who gave the name the shoe buckle was a man by the name of Charles Messier, and he called it M35 because it happened to be the order in which he discovered this particular body of stars. And And I asked every person, there were about 300 people, believe it or not, that came to look through these telescopes that night. I asked each of them if they could see a shoe buckle in the design. And it was fascinating because some people would say, "Oh, yes, I can see it very vividly. You see where it's kind of shaped in a curve? That's a buckle." And some said, "We have no idea what a shoe buckle is like because we don't see them anymore." And so for me, it was a very inventive experience. And this painting reminds me of that. So I just wanted to share that.
Oh, Mark, that's so rich. First of all, it's marvelous that you are going through these episodes and treatments about your own eyesight,
Yeah.
and you are sharing with others the capacity to see beyond our own, is it solar system? I guess
Oh,
that's
yeah.
okay. Beyond our own solar system, much less beyond, the immediacy of being here on Earth. So that's just very rich that you shared. Thank you so much. Thank you and thank you for the gift of being a docent and helping people
Yeah.
see beyond. Okay, so thank you. Let me call upon Justin and Linda, and then we'll call on some others as well.
Thank you so much, Rabbi, for having this. And I guess that in listening to, and particularly in part being inspired by the T.S. Eliot for quartets, but also considering when you're speaking about interbeing in this sense, in this non-duality, um, I consulted an old text of what's called the Heart Sutra in that Buddhist practice, which I think really kind of echoes part of the sentiment of this kind of beyond all of the dualities. And I want to say this, however, in the light of the blessing, and to bring to you, and again as a rabbi working with these various traditions, that again the blessing that's said at the end of Shabbat is Baruch Hamabdil ben Kodesh Lachol, to separate the separation of the sacred. And I appreciate appreciating both. So I just with that, with your patience, I'd like to read a little bit of the Heart Sutra in the spirit of the four quartets piece that you were reading here. So it says that all of the natural ways in which we are, all the dharmas are marked with emptiness. All our natural proclivities are marked by emptiness. Emptiness does they do not appear or disappear. They are not tainted or pure. They do not increase or decrease. They are neither tainted nor pure. That also for this piece. How do you talk about interbeing when you're talking about something that's so like moving in and against this division of tainted or purity? Therefore, in emptiness, no form, no feelings, perceptions, impulses, or even consciousness. No eyes, no ears, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no color, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no object of mind, no realm of eyes, and so forth, until no realm of mind consciousness, no ignorance, and no extinction of ignorance, and so forth, until no old age and death, and also no extinction of them. That's, I mean, that's kind of taking that point of view, the non-dualistic point of view, to its rational, and just to see how that feels within the group. I mean, because honestly, I have that universal non-dualistic perception of myself. That's the Hashem Echad. That feels to me. But the other piece, and understand, and then trying to present to Jewish people in a way that is not terrifying. I mean, it's terrifying to hear this kind of non-dualism. There's no attainment, there's nothing, it's all marked by emptiness. That's a lot to take in. And how do you keep people decent with each other? Okay, maybe that's too huge a question, but respectfully offer, Rabbi, anything anyone wants to say.
Yeah, I'll continue to open it up, but here's one thing that spark within me. which is, I think, a rich and healthy spiritual tradition, on the one hand, acknowledges that we are individual human beings having our individual responsibilities and experiences and losses and gains, and also that we are connected to everything that exists. So, on the one hand, to only see oneself as distinct and separate, I think is a source of misery and unhappiness and pain. To only live all the time with a sense of everything is interconnected can lead to a form of its own sense of pain and confusion and loss. I mean, to be crass, my bank account is my bank account. You know, it's not also Justin can't go into my bank account and take out $1,000. It's mine. So there are ways in which we need to live as our distinct selves, but a healthy spiritual tradition kind of serves to counteract that as being the only way we experience life, as a way to offset that. And I think that is what this Torah story is really all about. It's an acknowledgement that on the one hand, we live this embodied, distinct life, but also it's trying to offer ways to, if you will, counterbalance that with a sense of integration. Go ahead, Justin. Yeah.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you so much, respectfully. And this is just a kind of final thought or intuition that was around this, which is that from the Jewish perspective, this kind of non-dualistic welcoming of all in that sense, of all nations in that sense, comes at the time of Mashiach. And I mean, again, we can all say Mashiach, nah, I want that time to be there, but that's where the integral time is. The question is to say, well, it's, we make it happen, or we bring its presence into through this kind of awareness that the Mashiach could be the interbeing that is being celebrated and conscientized. That's my last thought. Okay.
Okay, you inspired this as well. Thank you, Justin, which is one thing. So that in Jewish tradition, the notion of Messiah is not a figure who comes to heal the world. The Messiah is a figure who comes to proclaim that human beings have reached the point in the development where they have healed the world. Yeah. So that's just one. So let me give an opportunity for others as well. Let me call upon Rose and Robert and Mark Levenstein. So go ahead, Rose.
Thank you, Rabbi. I'm going to take things back from this mystical, which is great, to the very practical. First of all, we should say something about that Joanne Fabrics is going out of business. That reminds me of that. So we should say something about that. But this goes into exquisite detail, and I see this whole Mishkan thing, in addition to all the spiritual stuff, this was really a team building exercise for Bnei Israel because they were cooperating on a project. They were actually doing something, putting together, taking their own talents and not only contributing to make this beautiful, but they had to cooperate with each other, which they didn't have to do until now. But I think that the reason, there's exquisite detail. If you look at other stuff, there are all these toss away things in the Torah, like a man shouldn't lie with another man like a woman. It's an abomination. Or, chase away the mother bird from the nest, or don't cook a kid in its mother's milk. It's like, what does this mean? But this is exquisite detail. And I think that the reason for that is, 100 Jews, 200 opinions. So whoever wrote this was like, you do it this way. It was like, it's really chapter and verse, like, you know, this is how you build it. Some of this stuff is kind of bizarre, like the 4 cubit altar, because that's almost 5 feet, but regardless. But I think I see this as having that purpose of two types of relationships, of the individual by giving their money and their talent and their skills to this higher purpose. But the other is really to build that teamwork. Because, I mean, it took a lot of teamwork to do this. This was like, the Chartres Cathedral of the time.
So
That's
just a way to uh, focus very specifically on this image that you're creating about the sense of teamwork and cooperation and everything. What we read says that God appears in between the two cherubim. So you have these two figures that are staring at one another while they're also staring down at the gift of the tablets that Moses has brought down. And so it's within that simultaneous gazing upon the divine gift and also the gift of a relationship with another human being. And that's where God's presence becomes known. So thank you for bringing all that material in about the degree to which this is a collaborative, cooperative community building exercise that causes the divine presence to be dwelling among us. Let me call upon Robert and then Mark Levenstein.
Thank you again for another lovely evening. I always enjoy our time together. I have somewhere between 2 and 6 hours worth of conversation racing in my head, so I'm just going to try and hit the key points. Over the years, I've developed a great deal of love for each one. For Justin, I will never forget, he was the first one that kind of welcomed me, he and Margot. And I remember the first time Justin said to you, well, maybe we could let Robert read. So this is from my heart to Justin, whom I love. And whatever it's worth to you, all of you are in my prayers every night. Not that my prayers have any effect, but it's out of love. You love for people, you have to pray for them. I want to quote Baha'u'llah, and then I want to build on that. Baha'u'llah says, O Son of Man, veiled in my immemorial being and in the ancient eternity of my essence, I knew my love for thee, therefore I created thee, have engraved on thee mine image, and revealed to thee my beauty. All of this is about the inner world. In a sense, there is no outer world. There's only an outer world because of our senses. Reality is always inside. Love, kindness, all of these things don't exist in the ether. They exist within the human heart and are felt by the human heart. That's obvious. And if one were to say, well, the tree is real, the tree itself would say, I'm not real because all I am is particles, quanta, moving through in waves. And when the waves reach their peak, they're called particles. And every particle, according to quantum field theory, which is the latest, the furthest end, moves in waves. So what is that beauty? We live in a world that is so material, so absorbed in the material, that we no longer can see the obvious. The obvious is beauty is in Scripture. And the beauty of Scripture is in its inner reality. Now, I'm just going to speak for my own self. If I look at any Scripture strictly outwardly, historically, that has some value, but it must have greater value inwardly. And so let me go to this, the Mishkan, mentioned over and over in the Torah. Brass, gold, silver. What is the inner meaning of that? The Mishkan is where we praise God, where we glorify Him. Okay, let's make that real, because God doesn't really care that much about buildings. He loves them if they're built for the right reason, but we're the temple he really cares about. What is the gold and the silver and the purple and everything? Love, kindness, generosity, tenderness, affection, understanding, art, all of these things. So to look at the inner and to have the courage to look at the inner and say, I refuse to be a slave to popular culture, every whim of every possibility, but to look straight ahead. And if it's not confirmed in nature, it isn't right, because there's only one reality. And that reality is, again, I'm just speaking from my own heart, okay? There's one reality with many signs and tokens and proofs and testimonies. And the genius of modernity is that we allow ourselves to be confused. But if we're Jewish, go to the Torah and find the inner meaning. Let me give an example. 40, you mentioned 40. Do you know that 40 is mentioned 4 times in the Quran? It refers to Moses, even in those, in the Baha'i revelation. Baha'u'llah was in prison for 40 years. And at 40, we're pretty much at our peak. So that inner realm, if we take the courage and put all the outward trappings aside, we have to work, et cetera, et cetera. By the way, I'm very disappointed that your bank account isn't mine, but I have enough of my own, so it doesn't matter. So it's looking at that inner, and you keep mentioning that time after time, because if we look at what's in the Torah or any history without understanding the deeper implications, it's like looking at an ocean and never realizing there are pearls. That's just my own humble take.
Robert, thank you so much. I'm so grateful you talk about love, and I'm so grateful that also you have returned us to this notion that what is being described here is not merely the construction that reflects an outer realm, whether it's the outer structure that is a physical structure called Mishkan, or whether it's the outer realm of the cosmos, but that what is also being constructed here is a reflection of the inner realm, which is the divine presence that we carry within us. So thank you so much for bringing all that to us, as well as sharing with us your own rich traditions of peace and love and wholeness. And let me
And
call
please
upon Mark
please
Levinstein.
forgive my passion. It's a
Yeah.
curse. I've had it since childhood. I'll die with it. Please pray for me.
There is nothing to forgive. We
You
love you.
Thank you, Mark. Mark Levinstein, please.
Yeah, I will try and be succinct and ask this as a concrete question, though it's really not. 25:2, tell the Israelite people to bring me gifts. You shall accept gifts for me from every person whose heart so moves them. What does our tradition teach us to do, or recommend or suggest we do for those whose hearts do not so move them, but they're following the instruction?
So, first of all, it's a very compelling statement. First of all, to recognize this is not a sovereign who is now saying everyone has to bring something for me. Everyone has to bring tribute for me. That's not what builds this unique enterprise called the Mishkan. And the fact that it is a notion that this particular project called Mishkan can only be constructed out of a community of free will, of hearts who are so moved. There will be other types of projects for which there will be something called taxation, where, in fact, this Shabbat is called Shabbat Shekalim. Everyone is supposed to bring a shekel in order for the maintenance of what was then the temple that stood. So it's another nice way, Mark. Thank you for bringing this up, in which a sense of requirement and obligation and even coercion, in a sense, is a part of life. It's not just everyone do what your heart so moves you. We can't have that entirely in every aspect of our life. But this particular project, which is characterized as what causes the divine presence to dwell among us, doesn't require, but can only be constructed out of people whose hearts are so moved. So there are cases, types of projects where one can be penalized for not sending in your shekels. But this particular enterprise of making the divine presence dwell among us, that project can only come into existence out of people who are doing so out of the free will of the movement of their hearts. Yeah. And let me call upon anyone here. Anna. Yeah.
I hate to let any Rothko go without commenting on it. When we were in New York, when Stephen was on sabbatical, we got to see an exhibit of the dark Rothkos. These huge, 6x8, a whole building full of them. And I don't think in my life I have ever been so moved by art or by color. Because somehow, without painting any definite thing, there's evanescence, there's density, and it's like, there's some definition and there's some not definition at all, like you have been talking about tonight. If you ever get a chance to see them in real person, it's really a spiritual experience.
So to follow up on that and whoops, and what it reminds me of is brings me back to this quote from Thich Nhat Hanh, the sense of, you can look here and you can see a cloud floating in the sheet. When you look at these works by Mark Rothko, what really is characterizes the most is a sense of this mass that's also floating, these masses that are floating like clouds. And he had this remarkable way of combining something that seemed very substantial
With something that was very sheer.
Very sheer, yes. So this material, this canvas, and these acrylics and these oils on this canvas, that somehow they seemed like they were floating. And when you looked at them, and he was very clear that he thought it was best if people only stood 18 inches away from a canvas. 18 inches, it just occurred to me. What he was saying was stand a cubit away from the canvas. That's what 18 inches is roughly.
High.
High. Thank you, Richard. Stand a high distance, a cubit distance from my work, and what will happen to you is your own materiality will no longer be what's most significant. What will happen is you will be absorbed into this work, and the absorption into this work will open up all kinds of emotions for you. And hopefully you'll return from that transformed.
As in meditation.
That's what, Richard? Yeah.
Yeah, when you said you'll be absorbed into it, I've been thinking about this for some time, but this Mishkan, this art, what's all about it? What's in there? You know what's in there? The pact. You're gonna build this and I'll bring the pact and put it in there. I think at the festival for bringing in the crops, that it's not the crop that's amazing. It's the teamwork that's amazing, that we've been given the possibility of doing that. And what's the prize of doing that? Willfully, without being told what to bring? The prize is the path.
Rich. This is very rich. All of this material. So I want to cohere us as we come to a ending point for this evening, with this notion that in keeping with the theme of this week's portion, which Rose pointed us back to, that this spiritual sense of, in a sense, losing one's self and then returning from that lost experience back into this world is achieved best within community. That we hold hands with one another, we journey together, we get lost together, and we find ourselves together. And I'm so grateful to be within a community with all of you, to be on this journey together of both getting lost and refound. God bless you all. I look forward to our regathering. God bless you. Be well, everyone.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank
Good
you.
night. Thank you.
Good night.